Humanity sets the agenda.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media. The time is 9 a.m. on the dot, and we'll be chatting to Julius Kleynhaus there. He's coming from, he's the executive manager for social innovation at WaterCAN. And we'll be chatting on a very, very sensitive issue there. And I think something that's been affecting all of us, especially if you've been in and around Joburg in the past 2 months there, the issue of water. I mean, listen to this. South Africa is facing a water crisis. Two-thirds of water resources are contaminated. And this is a stat that WaterCAN can, explore with us and make us understand what our future is in South Africa, particularly when it comes to a very rare but very important resource there, which is water. Julius is joining us via StreamYard. Julius, welcome to Salam Media, and thank you so much for joining us. A very, very, scary headline that I'm seeing there. Two-thirds of water resources are contaminated in South Africa. Just give us context. What does that mean in actuality? And is there hope of any kind that we can recover from this? And how did we get to this point, most importantly?
No, sure. Thanks for that. Look, it's a very real issue, and it's been for quite some time now. And there's a couple of things to it. South Africa is a water scarce country. We don't get a lot of rain, even though we get some of these flash floods these days. And that's a big problem. If you think about how the biggest cities and things of the world are built, they're built on main water resources. And in South Africa, if you look at Joburg as an example, the Vaal River is not necessarily a natural water resource. We've created this water by building the big dams in Lesotho, which feeds it. So it's a very finite resource that we need to look after. But the biggest problem is the contamination of this water, and specifically because of our wastewater treatment works. If you look at South Africa, where cities are based, so you abstract water from a water resource. Let's say Joburg gets the water from the Vaal Dam, and people consume the water and they use a toilet and they flush it down. It goes through a sewer system to a wastewater treatment works. Now, this wastewater treatment works is supposed to, and according to legislation, treat this water and get it to a reasonable standard to discharge it back into the river, so that it doesn't have an ecological negative consequence. The problem is that our municipalities have neglected our wastewater treatment works significantly over the last decade. So much so that probably about 70% of our wastewater treatment works in the country are completely dysfunctional, discharging raw sewage into our dams and rivers. And that's where the big problem lies. So that's where the biggest polluter is. But yes, agriculture and mine also plays a big role in contaminating water.
I want us to touch a bit on that part specifically, where you're speaking about, mines and the agricultural sector and probably, some other big chemical companies that might be involved in contamination. Because I think when someone hears the word contamination, the first thing that comes to their to their minds is, these big, multinational, companies, taking all their toxic waste into our water. Do we have that outside of municipalities and water treatment, do we have that problem in South Africa, where big companies are responsible for the bulk of the contamination of the water in our country?
To answer the question, if are they responsible for the bulk of contamination? Not at all. I think we definitely see some companies that are big polluters. But what the Department of Water and Sanitation and government has done is they have regulated private sector quite strongly, and there's big repercussions if these companies pollute. Directors can go to jail, shareholders apply pressure on the businesses. So we don't see the pollution at the extent that we see in wastewater treatment works in municipal level, because we don't see government hold itself accountable. We don't see municipal managers go to jail when they pollute. And as I've mentioned earlier, about 70% of our municipalities, their municipal managers should go to jail if they were companies. And that's where the big problem lies. The government cannot be the player and the referee. But yes, there are issues. And if you look at the agricultural sector, there's obviously herbicide and all these pesticides and things that get sprayed, which have different effects with seepage and water contamination that needs to be regulated. But I think if the policing of pollution was looked at more seriously, and that whoever, doesn't matter whether you're in government or private sector, were held to account, the individuals, we would see a difference. And just to conclude that, we've seen the Governor Mbeki municipality being found guilty now for exactly this, contaminating water, and they have been fined 200 million rand. Now, it's not the municipality, the municipal manager that has to pay this fine. It is the taxpayers again, and that is unacceptable. So we have to see more accountability in our local governments.
And I think what's very important, although from in a broader scale, what you're mentioning is very, very important, and people need to take heed of it. I think what the question that the layman and woman on the ground, hearing that 2/3 of water resources are contaminated, what they want to hear is my tap water safe for consumption? Can I still rely on my municipality and the government, to provide healthy, safe drinking water? Are South Africans still able, to pride themselves on having, some of the safest drinking water on the planet?
It's a very difficult question to answer, but I don't rely on government's water myself. I think it's very important that we start looking after the health and well-being of our families. So when it comes to drinking water, unfortunately, it's getting externalized to ourselves, and we need to start looking at things like either boiling water or putting additional filtration in our water systems at home. Just the Department of Water and Sanitation's Blue Drop report from last year indicated that about around 55 to 60% of drinking water in the country doesn't comply to national standards. So I think it's very important that we keep our eyes on it. When we see people getting sick, we have to consider water being contaminated. Sadly, even though it's the municipality's prerogative, or not prerogative, it's they must inform people when water is not up to standard. But over time, we see that their laboratories also being depleted, and they're not taking proper water quality samples and ensuring that the water is up to standard. And what makes it more difficult is because of the lack of upgrades on water treatment plants and things like that. With the excessive contamination in our water systems, the technology used to clean water is also not up to standard anymore because the contamination of the water abstracted is so high. So layman's terms, I don't think we can trust the water that's coming out of our taps, and we have to start looking at alternatives. We have to start applying a lot of pressure as communities on our municipalities and this government to start turning things around. We cannot move on like this. In fact, it's such a big health risk. And we've already seen people dying over the last year because of contaminated drinking water.
According to the Water and Sanitation Master Plan, as they call it, over 300 billion is needed to maintain the country's water infrastructure over the next 10 years. Is this enough? And is pumping more money into this, a solution, or there needs to be political will, in essence, to make it work? Because if you can just count all of the misused monies all across the municipalities when it comes to water and sanitation, the amount is staggering. The money is there, it's just not being directed to where it needs to go.
100%. We in the situation today because of the lack of the political will in addressing this, the lack of allocating funds and maintaining things well, the lack of ensuring that we've got the right skills in place so that we've got people who know what they do that does the work, the lack of ensuring that we've got the capacity so that we don't have to use external consultants and pay someone a salary to do the same work. So 300 billion rand, I think, is probably I think you can do it for less. But it will obviously escalate the more money gets stolen in the future, and if it's not applied correctly. So it's a very, very serious problem that we have in South Africa, and water is not a place to play politics. And I hope that voters will take this into consideration and start applying the right pressure on their political peers, and And yeah, can it be turned around? Absolutely. I think if we've got, we don't even have to get other countries to get involved and things like that. If our government's good enough stewards and they start using the talent that we have, regardless of race and your background, we've got the right people in South Africa to turn things around and fix it. We just need to have the will.
I think that's where we're going to leave it, Julius. Very, very, very concerning picture that you're painting there. I'm sure we'll catch up with you as the story progresses. But for now, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thanks. Have a wonderful day.
There you have it there. Julius Kleynhaus there. His car, Julius, they're just painting a very, very bleak picture about water in South Africa. And, just almost imagine 2/3 of water resources in the country being contaminated. And it's painting a very, very bleak picture. They're saying South Africa can't pride itself. I remember at some point, I think it was one of, as a South African, you always make that point that, we have some of the safest drinking water on the planet. And it's kind of sad to see the level of deterioration that we can't even trust that the municipality and government can, provide an essential service, something, to a country as big as South Africa on the international scale, should be something so easy for the government to provide, but they're seemingly failing at that. 2/3 of water resources contaminated, but there is hope, as Julius said, they're the executive manager of social innovation at WaterCAN. But yeah, a very, very bleak picture. And I think the onus is for us to now, take heed and take responsibility and start voting right and start being involved in our municipalities and asking the right questions about where the monies are going and who's responsible for the maintenance of our water systems and the pipes and everything in between. The time to be silent and just looking after yourself and, your own family in the corner is long past us by, because things are starting to affect each and every one of us, no matter if you're in the leafy suburbs of the north or, you are in a township or a village. Each and every corner of South Africa is now being affected by the deterioration happening in our municipalities. And, with elections coming up, that's one of the avenues that you can use, to make your voice heard and to make the necessary changes. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to take the news with Zai Chadwick.